What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're taking a look at a Boker Kalashnikov, and you may have guessed that already if you recognize the iconic box on the table, and if you saw my community post last week, you could probably even guess which model, and that's the new BladeOps Exclusive automatic box cutter version. Unreasonably excited about this one for whatever reason. Sits on your standard Kalashnikov frame, so if you're familiar with the ergos there, this should feel identical. However, they did swap out that blade for a utility blade housing. Very cool. I don't think I've ever seen an automatic utility knife, and that's outside or out the front. Doesn't mean they don't exist, but I've never come across them. So if they exist, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll check out one of those as well. But very excited to check this one out. Now you can see no tools required to swap out that blade. It has this quick release mechanism, which I'll show a little later in the video. But that allows you to flip this blade over once that one side goes dull, swap it out entirely with a standard utility blade, which is really nice. Nothing proprietary going on there. And also just discard it if you're storing this or maybe even traveling with it. Mikey Daily Carry brought up a great point on the community post of whether or not this one would be TSA friendly. And the answer is I have no idea. I would assume so once you discard that blade because there's no live edge. There is a strap cutter, but I don't think strap cutters are excluded by TSA. Not an expert there, so definitely look it up. But outside of that, nothing that would really block this from travel. The only exception is that this is an automatic and you get the wrong TSA agent and they may not care that there's no blade. They may confiscate this. And so I personally probably wouldn't try traveling with this one, but if you're more adventurous than I am and do try it, let me know if it gets through or not. But with that being said, I did want to set this down for a moment to mention that we're recording on our BladeOps background, but this was not sent to me for review. And I will still have an affiliate link in the description. Helps out the channel, no additional cost to you if you use that link to purchase this knife or any other knife on BladeOps. But I did pay full price for this knife, which is $65, because as soon as I saw it, I knew I wasn't going to want to send this one back after I was done with the review. Really glad I purchased this because it's such a fun little knife. Now, before we get back into the knife, I did want to take just a moment to spotlight the packaging, which I don't usually do in videos, but I think this one's pretty cool. I've gotten rid of probably 90% of my knife boxes. I hold on to the tubes from slip joints like GEC and Jack Wolf, but unless there's something interesting with the box, I don't typically hold on to them anymore. And this is one that I do think I will hold on to, obviously modeled after a magazine, specifically for an AK-47, and I think it's just cool looking. And so I'll probably take the laser cut foam out of here, put some small trinkets, put it on display. It's just cardboard, it's not metal or anything super durable, so probably don't want to be using it too much, but I think it looks pretty fun, so we'll probably throw this on my desk or workbench. Other thing I wanted to note with these boxes is that you see there's a safety seal here. Those are going to be broken when this item arrives, and so don't be alarmed. There's a reason for it, and the reason is it's actually illegal to import automatic knives into the United States. So all of these Kalashnikovs, whether it's this box cutter version or any other automatic version of these, which I think they're all automatic, are entirely manufactured in Taiwan, but shipped to the United States as a manual button lock. And so they're not automatic when the retailer gets them. The retailer then, in this case BladeOps, adds those springs, converts it over to an automatic, and then ships them out as automatics. So when you get it, it will be automatic, but when they're manufactured, they're manual button lock. So pretty cool little workaround there. And yeah, this is actually the first Kalashnikov I've ever handled. And so I've seen them in videos. I've even seen them in person. I just wasn't particularly interested. I always thought the handles looked a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit cheap, and was very surprised when I actually got this in. First off, I thought they were injection molded polymer of some sort, like a plastic. Turns out they're aluminum, and this was sitting in the mailbox all day. It was freezing cold when I picked it up. It was immediately obvious that this was metal, and so feels a lot better than I thought they looked. The other thing though is that I don't love when handles force you into a specific grip. You can see there's a groove for each individual finger here, have the speed bumps on the handles to keep you locked into that place, and then some extra grip here in the texturing, even some jimping on the spine. And so really suggesting you to hold this in a very specific way, which is exactly like this, and that is surprisingly comfortable. Now, everyone's hand is different, and that's why I don't love when it locks you into place. So for my hand, that's comfortable. For your hand, may or may not be, but it actually is extremely comfortable. And the fact that this is a utility knife, I'm mostly going to be using this for cutting open packages and things like that. So I'll be in this more pinch grip with my index finger up here, and you can see I'm not really using those finger grooves in the same way, but in the grip that is suggesting, it is pretty comfortable overall. I was very surprised about that. And the only noteworthy thing in that grip is this pocket clip. It sticks out probably a little more than it needs to. You can see it could be a little bit slimmer. And so I do feel that a little bit. It's not an immediate hot spot. It might develop into one, but immediately I'm just aware of it at all times. And it's in a place where it could have been something that you don't really feel at all. If this were a little bit flatter, it's nicely placed behind your knuckles where that would really hide that feeling. So wouldn't mind seeing that slim down a little bit, but overall pretty minor gripe there. The jimping is also incredibly effective if your finger is landing there. As I mentioned, a lot of times I'm choked up a little bit and so not really feeling that, but it is effective when you're sitting on it. 4¼ inches in that handle and 7.5 inches overall, meaning that that utility blade housing is about 3¼ inches, although of course you only get about 1.5 inches or so of usable edge here, which is pretty standard with a utility knife, and so perfectly fine with that. We have that strap cutter, probably not going to get a ton of use out of it, but I see why they put it there. They had all of this extra metal here, might as well make use of it, and that's a kind of important thing to be there because it allows the utility blade to sit way further out from the handle. That makes just for a better experience. You don't want that right up against the handle. You'd have a weird like edge to handle ratio, and so it's nice that it's sticking out as far as it is. And so nice use of space there. You can see that that for branding as well. Kalashnikov 74 Boker. Don't mind that, it's a little bit in your face, but don't mind it because it's just on some blank steel anyway. On the backside, pretty minimal branding actually. We just have that serial number, which in my case is 0049. No idea how many of these were made, but 4 digits, so implies at least 1,000 of them. These are still readily available on the website as I'm filming this. Other branding is pretty minimal, only around the pivot here. The screw has some text. One of the words says Kalashnikov. I have no idea what the other word is. I'm fairly certain it's not Boker or Automat, so don't have any guesses at what it might be. I'll have to bust a magnifying glass out later and take a closer look at that. But otherwise, pretty clean look overall. We have T6 body screws, looks like a T8 pivot. These speed bumps, again, I could do without them. I think they just take away from the overall look. Do have a lanyard hole back here for those who use lanyard holes, and a deep carry pocket clip, right hand tip up only. It does look like it could be reversible because of how this is mounted. Very deep carry wraps around to the inside of that handle, but you can see the show side cover does not have the same cutout as the pocket clip side cover, and so maybe with a little bit of modification you might be able to get there, but out of the box, not swappable. Now let's do the blade swap and then we'll talk about the action and the weight of this. I guess I can just throw that in there, 3.6 ounces, so a little bit on the heavier side for the size, not terrible. But as far as that blade swap, really easy to do. A little bit of an awkward angle here on camera. You just have this quick release button here, so I'm going to press that down here, and you want to pull straight out. Make sure you're sitting behind the edge, so I like to grip it from back here, and just pull it straight out. It slides out, no problem. You can see there's 2 notches. This is a standard utility blade, so you do want to hold that button until you pass the second notch, or it will lock that in place as well. I tend to just carry it until it's all the way in, all the way out. As far as replacing it, same thing. You can flip it around if you want to, or if it's new blade, put it in the same way, and you just slide that straight in. Make sure you're straight in, and then let go of the button. Always like to give it a little tug to make sure that it's seated in there correctly and locked into place. Especially important on this one. I don't know if it would fly out if it weren't locked into place, but on an automatic knife like this, I probably wouldn't want to take my chances. It would be a bad day if it did go flying, and so always just make sure that's seated in there. Now, as far as the action goes on here, it is an automatic, and so comes flying out of there pretty smooth overall, really smooth actually, and a decent kick. It's not as heavy as something like our ProTech, which may be a good thing for some people. For me, I love the way that feels with the ProTech with that super solid kick, but this one's very firm and authoritative as well. It's just not as hard as a ProTech. And so I mentioned some people may prefer that. My wife doesn't like opening my ProTechs because she's afraid that when she pushes that button, it's going to come flying out of her hand, which is a valid concern because they kick so hard. In this case, it doesn't really feel like that, and she has no problem deploying this one, and so definitely going to be a preference thing. But the action itself is smooth, very easy to operate, and very consistent. I don't have any concerns that it's going to fail me anytime soon. Obviously, as grime builds up in here, as those springs weaken, we may need to do some maintenance down the road to keep that action as consistent as it is. But out of the box, very consistent and feels very good. So pretty happy with that action overall. Only thing worth noting is that button. We use the same button for closing it as we do to open it. So you push down the button and push it closed. Once you get started, you can just let go of the button and you'll see it pop back up when it's locked in. But I did want to note the button can make a little bit of noise, and it seems to be wearing in pretty quickly, so that may go away entirely. But I don't think it's the button itself squeaking. I think it's the coil spring behind it kind of compressing, and as it gets kind of a little bit looser, we may lose that noise. Let's see if it even picks up. I'm going to stop talking for a moment. And so pretty quiet actually now. It's not as loud as it was when I got it. And so pretty happy with that, honestly. At first it was a little bit squeaky and definitely more audible than that. And so that was really my only concern with that action on that automatic. But overall, feels very good. Really happy with this one. I am impressed by the handles, honestly. I've always avoided the Kalashnikov because I didn't like the look of the handles in pictures, and that's why it's nice to be able to handle some of these in person sometimes. I probably should have handled one at Blade Show where they had a ton of them, but just wasn't all that interested. But now that I've handled it, I may end up picking up one of these. Probably not the Desert Warrior. I mentioned in my Godson video that I feel like I got the best Desert Warrior knife that I'm going to get with that Godson. Don't really need anymore, so I've kind of moved on from that entirely. May go with one of the BladeOps exclusives. They have a couple different exclusives besides this one with different blade colors, handle colors, and so may check out one of those just for fun. This is a pretty affordable automatic knife also. I think I already mentioned the price at $65. Feels very, very fair for what you're getting. Boker does pretty good work, and this is a made in Taiwan one. Obviously with like their slip joints, I prefer the Solingen, but I think all of their like modern knives are made in Taiwan as far as I know, and so no problem with that whatsoever either. But would love to hear your thoughts on this one down in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notification button, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.